I've always liked this saying, the only thing we can be certain of is that we cannot be certain of anything. Now there is a deeper philosophical meaning to that, but for my sake, let's keep it simple. I have no idea what's going to happen heading into 2024, but given the current trends, we have to assume that more chaos is on the horizon. So just to start us off, we're getting some information about a new variant that carries a large number of mutations. The stories are starting to come out pretty slowly, but eventually the floodgates will open. And really, it's already begun. Take a look at today's headlines.
This summer, most Americans left COVID in the past, gathering together once again mask-free. But tonight, signs of a COVID resurgence.
So the video playing right now indicates that we have a new one making its way through Europe too. There's also been word from a TSA whistleblower. Apparently, TSA employees were instructed that masks are coming back by October, and apparently we're going to be in full lockdowns and restrictions by December. So we've all kind of half-joked about this happening right before 2024. Knowing full well that they might actually try it. But really, there is no way people are going to go for this again, right? Will everybody just comply with the ridiculous mandates, the plexiglass solutions, and the fashion statement masks? Will they all stand back in line, marked upon the X, making sure to keep the proper distance? Will they quickly return to ratting out their neighbors for having family or friends at their house? Will they even start to get tattoos again, denoting their new boosters? Will they brand themselves with big pharma logos, soulless slogans, and renew their worship of false idols in the name of scientism? Well, I truly hope not, yet I do fear that history repeats and no one learns. But don't you worry, because it gets even more interesting. And speaking of chaos on the horizon, a recent survey stated that 30 million American adults believe that political violence is okay, if that's what it takes to stop Trump from winning the presidency in 2024. Now, 30 million people sounds pretty bad, and that's because it kind of is. That's about 10% of the population, and it would be naive of us to assume that would go unopposed. As for every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction, and typically that also applies to social dynamics. It seems to me that people are being primed for a conflict. Now, one of the things we have to keep in mind is the 3.5% rule. The claim is that only 3.5% of the population working towards some revolutionary idea. Well, that's all that's needed to enact dramatic change. And well, we are well above 3.5%. Things could get real interesting real fast. So I don't know why I feel this way, because people have always been out of their minds. But I'm still left wondering, what the hell happened to everybody? And as I said before, history repeats, and yet no one ever learns. Now it could just be a testament to how powerful psyops and group dynamics are. It's a hell of a thing. But I do want to point out that domestically, the powers that be are not offering any way out of this. The only path forward is escalation. Right now, there seems to be two options. Either Trump is a cult leader trying to overthrow the United States, or Democrats are engaged in seditious conspiracy to steal power. Take your pick, but all roads lead to hell. And the crazy part is, that extends to global conflicts too. They are not offering a way out of World War III either. There is no path to de-escalation with Ukraine and Russia. There's no tamping down tension with China. And on top of it all, it's underpinned by two rival economic systems emerging. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm getting the sense that this is a perfect recipe for conflict. In fact, at the rate things are going, we could possibly see a global revolution against the Great Reset and Agenda 2030. You could see civil conflict in the US, which more than likely would spread to various regions as well. And on top of the various civil wars due to internal power struggles, as luck would have it, we could have a world war popping off too. Now, it could even happen all at the same time. How would that play out? I have no idea. Like I said, the only thing we could be certain of is that we cannot be certain of anything. I do wish people would realize they're being coaxed into a conflict though. But here's the thing. There is a reason as to why they're throwing gas on the fire. In my opinion, I think they're setting the stage for political violence, and then, of course, they're going to use that violence to justify further moves to limit dissent. The fact is, the political establishment and the media have intentionally fanned the flames of civil unrest. And the only way to return to some semblance of normalcy is by cooling tensions from all sides. And so, will that happen? Of course not. After all, it's all about divide and conquer, right? Real quick, we do have to fill everybody in on what we talked about last week. This is all about much, much more. So this idea of global government, well, it started off as a global model on socialism, and it has since transformed into a sort of techno-fascism, otherwise known as stakeholder capitalism. You know, merging corporations with governments and having society ran through artificial intelligence. In the last video, we talked about the dreaded New World Order. In my opinion, this New World Order that everyone talks about is the carbon-based system. This is what they've been referencing for the last 50 years. Now, if you haven't watched that video yet, I believe you should. I showed about a dozen clips of the Bushes, the Clintons, Obama, and yes, even Joe Biden, all talking about this specific agenda over the years. dating back to the early 1990s. And really, there's two important timelines to consider. So basically, in the 1970s, the idea was set in stone, and they started the social engineering aspects related to population, seeding the public consciousness, if you will. However, in the 1990s, that's when they started to get the ball rolling in an economic sense. In 1992, the United States signs on to Agenda 21 at the Earth Summit in Rio. Yeah, so they started to get every nation on board with this plan. A couple decades of talks and preparations begin, and now those same policy proposals from the 1970s are finally being enacted around the world. And so naturally, the final stage is the Great Reset. Turning off the old monetary system and switching to the new one. One of the most effective manipulations ever conceived was the introduction to the term conspiracy theorist. It has grown to be one of the most effective tools at dismissing claims of corruption or tyranny. And so, to the skeptics, when you hear politicians talk about the New World Order, dispel your preconceived notions. For the last 75 years or so, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, we had a liberal economic order, which operated under the international rules-based system. And so the NWO that they're talking about, first and foremost, is just a new iteration of a global economic system. What I believe they are talking about is exactly the system we are currently moving into. Every single thing we are seeing happen on the world stage today is related to this power struggle over dictating global investment for the next 100 years. Now, we are sticking with the same theme, but we do have to jump to a few clips being shared on social media. It is important because, as I've said before, I don't think anyone really understands how big this agenda is. And the fact that, as a result, every aspect of life is going to change. I can't emphasize enough that the US establishment signed on to these global agreements years and years ago. They are connected, and everyone is working towards this future.
Surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin.
Embedded in his hand is a microchip that serves as his keys, his ID, and his wallet.
Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition?
In a matter of seconds, the chip is inserted. The transformation is complete.
When scanned, all of a person's information about their vaccination status is shown on a reader or phone.
Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading.
So first, here's a clip of Klaus Schwab talking about the drastic changes. It's only about 50 seconds, so just bear with me.
If we look at all the challenges, we can speak about the multi-crisis. An economic, a political, a social, an ecological, an institutional crisis. But actually, what we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process.
So, did you notice how he lists the components of the polycrisis? Everything from the cost of living, the rising cost of energy, and the food crisis, all the way to the threat of international conflict and world war. But we can't forget, apparently we're also facing a climate disaster and now global financial collapse. Well, that seems to be the cherry on top. Yes, we seem to be gripped by a global polycrisis, or as George Soros calls it, a crisis of everything. And do not forget, this polycrisis of doom is entirely man-made. This is how they force change upon society. So Klaus Schwab says that the deep systemic restructuring of our world will take time, and after, the world is going to look very, very different. Also, do not forget that Klaus Schwab warned about this transition many times during 2019 and 2020.
So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen.
People assume that we're going back to the good old world, but that is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen. End of quote. And yeah, Klaus, we will see about that, won't we? So we have 2 more clips to watch before we try to connect everything together. This one is of Klaus Schwab again, talking about how they are going to watch over you 24/7, 365.
Dans ce nouveau monde, on doit accepter.
Oh, sorry about that, he's speaking French. Let me translate. And I quote, "In the new world, you will have to accept total transparency. It will become a part of your personality. Everything will be transparent. If you have nothing to hide, then you have no reason to be afraid. End of quote. You know, that's very funny coming from these people, as they consistently try to cover up their own crimes. But you know, you have to be transparent. Not them, but you do, no doubt about it. Now, there is a lot of stuff to consider here. How do you reconcile the surveillance state with the ongoing destruction of the legal system? Well, personally, I believe they are seeding the public consciousness with a new legal paradigm. You see, in order for a technocratic society to really function, they have to change how crime and law is perceived by the public. And this is exactly what I mean when I say that people don't really understand the level of change that needs to happen. And it has to happen fast for it to work. For example, why do you believe the IRS was asking people to declare their income from illegal rackets? Now, personally, I believe it's all related to this new digital reality. In this new digital economy, everything is going to be tracked. Cash will be obsolete. Everything from drug deals to selling stolen merchandise will end up tracked on a blockchain, right? If that is the case, which it is, well then everything needs to change for that new system to function, including perceptions on how life should be. Yes, perceptions on what is legal and what is not legal will have to change. And the entire judicial framework will have to be changed to accommodate this, which more than likely is an ulterior motive to Soros and his prosecutors, subverting the legal system. This need they have to change the public's perception could be a part of the reason for a narco-tyranny. Look, there's a reason why they let criminals go and target law-abiding citizens. They have to destroy the old legal system first. Yes, that's right, from the ashes of the old, they will try to build a new. And yeah, that thought seems pretty common these days. However, in the truest sense, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear. Well, that does echo Nazi manipulation, as I believe Goebbels said this word for word. So, it's really not surprising that Klaus Schwab would go in this direction, especially if you know about his family's past. However, that phrase right there is often used to justify modern surveillance states as well, which is exactly what we're heading into.
And everything that is a moving object is being automatically tracked. The color boxes represent that the computer has recognized the moving objects. You can see individuals crossing the street, you can see individuals walking in parking lots. There's actually enough resolution to be able to see the people waving their arms or walking around, what kind of clothes they wear. And you could pick the location of where you produce these images anywhere in the entire field of view.
Antoniadas can open up to 65 windows at once and can see objects as small as 6 inches on the ground.
From even 17,500 feet, the white thing that you see flying around is a bird.
Argus streams live to the ground and also stores everything, 1 million terabytes of video a day, which is the equivalent of 5,000 hours of high-definition footage.
In fact, check out this clip of Yuval Harari, detailing how the COVID response was used as a way to get people to accept the looming biosurveillance state.
COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin. What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. We're now seeing mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance.
Yes, the fact is that the changes we are seeing to the criminal system, the CBD system, and mass surveillance networks are all connected. Every aspect of life needs to change. It's the only way for technocracy to work. In this new world, there will be no privacy, which has a wide range of implications besides, the obvious tyrannical nature of it.
You may be surprised to learn that it's a future that has already arrived. Everything in that video that you just saw is based on technology that is already here today. Artificial intelligence has enabled advances in decoding brain activity in ways that we never before thought possible. You've heard a lot about AI over the past few years. Here at Davos, it's been the talk of the hour. But I want to talk about it in a different way, which is the ability to decode brainwave activity. After all, what you think, what you feel, it's all just data. Data that in large patterns can be decoded using artificial intelligence. Consider this, the average person thinks thousands of thoughts each day. As a thought takes form, like a math calculation, you're happy, you're tired, you're hungry, you're elated. Neurons are firing in your brain, emitting tiny electrical discharges. As a particular thought takes form, hundreds of thousands of neurons fire in characteristic patterns that can be decoded with EEG, or electroencephalography, and AI-powered devices. In fact, what you're seeing here is my brain activity while I'm wearing a simple device like the one on the right. We're not talking about implanted devices of the future. I'm talking about wearable devices that are like Fitbits for your brain.
If you allow this new paradigm shift to happen, everything you do, everything you purchase, everything you feel, every emotion, and even every heartbeat will be cataloged and monitored through artificial intelligence. Think about what life will be like and if that's a future you want. On top of that, make sure to think long term. After a decade, possibly two, will human rights be a thing of the past? All signs point to yes. However, as Orwell said, if you want to avoid this nightmare scenario, don't let it happen. It depends on you. And yes, that is the truth. And people need to wake up to the true scope of this plan, and they have to wake up to it soon, because it's well underway. Australia is in the process of banning cash.
Well, outrage in Queensland tonight after a local woman rocked up to her bank to withdraw cash, only to be told they didn't have any. Taryn Compton wanted to grab some notes to pay a tradie, but when she got to the ANZ ATM, she realised she'd forgotten her EFTPOS card. When she asked the teller for the money instead, she was told the bank doesn't carry cash.
Australia is slowly shifting towards being cash-free. More than $1 billion worth of notes have disappeared from circulation in the past 12 months. It follows the Commonwealth Bank's decision to start trialling cashless branches across Sydney.
We've taken another step towards a cashless society. A big bank has confirmed customers in some locations can no longer withdraw money over the counter as branches continue to wind back services.
It's up there with the pub with no beer, the bank with no cash. ANZ has confirmed some branches no longer handle cash at the counter. Others are directing customers to smart ATMs for cash transactions.
The latest figures on ATMs shows the number of machines has more than halved from almost 14,000 back in 2017 to around 6,000 in the middle of last year.
For years, cash was king, but not anymore. Hello there. I wondered if you had any change for a $50 note.
No, I don't have any cash.
Don't use cash anymore these days?
No, definitely not. No change at all.
Never?
Never. Not having cash is much more convenient.
For the first time since dollars and cents were introduced in the 1960s, Australia's cash supply is shrinking.
We are becoming fully digitalised. We're still producing cash out there, but we're just becoming more reliant on other ways to pay. And this is what you would expect. In fact, it's a trend that's long.
On top of India and Africa signing onto the BRIC financial system with China and Russia, they are also switching to a digital currency. This is really one aspect that I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. The stage is set for war. Yes, we have two warring economic systems fighting it out to determine the global alignment for the next 100 years. Yes, I believe the war is to determine who is going to control global investment for the future. And this is a quote from one politician in Africa, and I quote, "They are printing money. They are not manufacturing anything at all. It's printing money. This has been one of their weapons globally, the monetary system. Sanctions here, sanctions there. We need a new financial architecture globally," end of quote. Now, historically speaking, talking like that means war. But even still, places like China and Russia are setting up their own social credit systems. And surely, they are ready for a quick adoption of a central bank digital currency, of some kind. Every single nation is moving towards a technocratic future. And yes, they all seem to work with the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. Just for example, Russia ran CyberPolygon, the cyber pandemic simulation, and are actively using China to set up surveillance networks on their citizens. So my point is that it does seem like they're all moving into this great reset agenda, while simultaneously fighting back against the carbon-based system with a gold-backed currency. There's a disconnect here that I can't quite figure out. Their actions and their positions seem to be diametrically opposed. So could it all be a ruse? Are they all going in this direction? Are they all in on it? As they say, is the entire world a stage?
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
The ammunition used by cyber.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
Gripping at my skin, the walls of night close in.
But the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
Or, on the other hand, are they going to fight a world war to determine who is at the head of the table? So perhaps everybody in the world agreed to a new economic system, but this fight is determined who is controlling it? So yeah, I'm not too sure how this is going to play out. Anyway, in the United States, the FedNow payment system launched, which is the beginning of the digital dollar. Yes, we are going headfirst into central bank digital currency. And on top of that, you might have heard about WorldCoin. So let's talk about that for a second, but just keep in mind, this is all an economic scam. Do not let politicians get you to believe that social credit scores, CBDCs, individual carbon taxes, carbon markets, and of course 24/7 biometric surveillance will change the climate. You'll just be entirely controlled and it will still be hot in the summer. So anyway, let's talk about WorldCoin. This is a digital identity crypto project co-founded by OpenAI's Sam Altman. It requires the user to scan their eyeball to create a unique digital identity. And I'm assuming that it's brought to you by the World Economic Forum. And well, it does seem that way. So the creator of this dystopian nightmare is Sam Altman, who is a proponent of digital identity and health passports. He's also a part of the World Economic Forum's Global Artificial Intelligence Council and part of the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So, are you starting to see the vision? And I quote, "Once they're able to link your biometrics to your fiat currency, they'll own you irreversibly forever. The sooner you understand this, the sooner you shall be free." End of quote. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. So, WorldCoin is in the process of onboarding hundreds of thousands of people. For example, here's a video of them scanning eyeballs in Barcelona. So yes, a new financial system connected to sensitive biometric information, mostly harvested from poor people. Sure sounds like a terrible idea, and well, terrible doesn't really do it justice. Yes, WorldCoin will need to assemble a vast database of iris data. However, not everyone is eager to gaze into the orb. And so WorldCoin turned to the global south, home to the cheapest eyeballs, and played a dark game of what will people do for money. And as it turns out, people will do incredibly stupid things for cash. Who could have seen that coming? So, as a prize for offering up your biometric data, they were offering a coupon for free French fries, a $10 rebate on store purchases, and even a chance to win a shiny new car. And you know, this is just as bad as New York City offering free cheeseburgers in exchange for getting the vaccine. It's crazy. However, I would like to make a prediction. Once they run out of steam and can't get any more dummies to scan their eyeballs, giving up their biometric data for a damn $10 rebate or free French fries from the food court, well, once that plan runs its course, my prediction is that they're going to merge with Meta. You know, Facebook. Now, the reason I say that is because Meta has one of the most extensive facial recognition databases via the Tag Your Friends feature on Facebook. Yes, they're going to try to get you hooked onto a unique digital ID, one way or another.
I'm going to get you. I don't know how, but I'm going to get you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But seriously, social media tied to financial accounts might be the avenue. Which, by the way, is already happening to a lot of content creators, so, oh shit. Yes, that's right, accept your universal basic income, don't forget to tag your friends, and enjoy the new normal completely controlled. Anyway, my point here is that linking immutable biometric traits to money could have dystopian consequences. So just imagine that your digital identity has been lost in some way, shut down by authorities for non-compliance, or otherwise blocked. And so when your immutable digital identity is locked, imagine merchants who won't take your coins from you without a digital signature announcing your world ID. Well, if that's the case, then it's over. No old accounts, no new accounts, no soup for you. Yes, that's right, as far as society is concerned, you do not exist. What a dystopian premise. So the main takeaway is that WorldCoin is not a new radical financial system, and it certainly is not aimed at equality or fairness. Yes, it is just more of the same. However, this time it comes with a little bit more data harvesting. So there is one way that Sam Altman and Yuval Harari are very similar. Well, they both speak out of both sides of their mouth. This is the Hegelian dialectic at its extreme. WorldCoin is just another example of the same scheme. Just trust us, they say, as you peer into the shiny orb. And so, in short, do not trust them and do not stare into the orb. I mean, it's all just so very crazy. With your biometric data tied to your financial account, and as your online behavior is monitored, very soon governments and international corporations will be dictating what you can and cannot purchase. You're also going to have to contend with alternative credit scoring, which simply means if you're a good little sheep, well, that's going to be the bedrock to their new predatory financial system. Comply with the government or starve. Oh, yeah, that's going to be the rule of the land. And so, as I watch videos of these people stand in line to stare into the orb, I wonder if this thought ever entered their mind. Will people really voluntarily give up their own freedom? Or perhaps they've been tricked into it. I often wonder, have they been pulled into a deep sleep by a corporate lullaby and a promise of a new world? Well, if that is the case, then I guess I should say that I wish you well. I really do hope you enjoy sleepwalking through the digital wasteland, with each step compelled by the pull of your puppet strings. But I will not be joining you. That much I know for sure. I really just wish people would think a little bit deeper about this stuff. Once your quote-unquote alternative credit score is derived from compliance with government measures, once the currency is programmable, determining what you can and cannot buy, and of course, with the 24/7 surveillance grid being unveiled, once that comes to fruition, they got you, forever and always. A trap we set ourselves, and the bait was always convenience. Welcome to hell. And so, just to finish up, always remember that the economic plan and climate messaging are connected, a point that I'm really going to try to hammer home. So, just in case you didn't realize or try to scare you, UN Secretary Antonio Guterres rolled out some of his most apocalyptic climate rhetoric to date, declaring, and I quote, "The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived," end of quote.
And for scientists, it is unequivocal. Humans are to blame. All this is entirely consistent with predictions and repeated warnings. The only surprise is the speed of the change. Climate change is here, it is terrifying, and it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended, the era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable, and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable. Leaders must lead.
Yes, that's right. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. I mean, the fear propaganda is used for a reason. As far as I know, the Tavistock Institute was one of the first organizations studying what fear does to decision making. Just remember, they've done extensive studies on what makes you tick and how to exploit that. And so, with the fires in Hawaii, and just in general, a lot of fires have been popping up around the entire world, well, I have a lot of questions. But we're not going to get into that right now. But I just want to say, your questions about this situation are very, very justified. A lot of very strange things are happening. And moving forward, as we get closer to 2030, they are going to use these disasters to push the climate change agenda. Now, could it be a never let a good crisis go to waste? Yeah, sure. However, as I said, there are a lot of questions that should be asked. Lots of strange things happened. And as we get closer to 2030, this fear messaging is going to ramp up to levels that we have yet to imagine. The fact is, the United Nations is capitalizing on summer temperatures to ratchet up the global warming rhetoric. All of this is a charade, designed to drive the world into technocracy. And, from an outside perspective, it does kind of seem like it's failing. Just please, for the love of God, remember, carbon taxes and social credit scores are not going to change the climate. It's an economic scam that's only going to result in you being totally controlled via programmable money and biometric surveillance. Do not fall for it. If you want to complain that the current US system is unfair, and that wealth is concentrated into the top 1%, well, give them this much control and see what happens. You are going to regret it with every fiber of your being. One of the most hypocritical aspects to this brilliant plan of theirs is carbon offsetting. Rich people can pay a fee for the carbon they emit, and because of that, not only will they claim to be helping, but they can also just live as they are now. And normal people like you and me, well, they want us to live with the restrictions and stick to our 15-minute cities. You should not let them get away with this. All it is feudalism for the new age. This whole agenda is underpinned and predicated on the idea that humans are nothing more than biological machines. Machines that can be hacked, altered, and changed. To them, there are no moral qualms because things such as the soul do not exist. And really, from that baseline, nothing good is going to come out of it. Once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals or Subscribestar. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.